We are now in aspect 4 of Tavani's chapter 6 on cybersecurity. In this aspect, we're going to discuss cyberterrorism, electronic civil disobedience, and information warfare. Cyberterrorism is politically motivated, concerns itself with the conditions and goals of whole groups or populations rather than individuals. And it aims to do great harm, such as loss of life or great economic harm, in order to bring about change, for better or for worse, a utilitarian would point out. Kantian certainly would not. It is also not usually carried out by sovereign states, and it is usually without a declaration of war. An example would be blocking some website due to the position of its owners, due to the position that its owners take on something. The technical term there is distributed denial of service, DDoS. The ethical question of interest to us with regard to cyberterrorism is whether certain acts of cyberterrorism are not acts of electronic civil disobedience, ECD, instead. That would make them justified for a utilitarian. An example of civil disobedience is a protest or a sit-in. It is not an officially political way to express the political will of the people or a group of people. Tavani, the author of our textbook, writes that an act of civil disobedience should be ethically motivated, nonviolent, and without damage to persons or property. Tavani argues that insofar as financial or other damage is caused by acts like DDoS and other like acts of hacking that may be ethical in their intention, the case for it being ECD, electronic civil disobedience, is that much weaker. The more damage these acts of disobedience cause, the less they are likely to be actual electronic civil disobedience acts. That is the argument by Tavani. A good example of information warfare is the case in which the security chapter was started by Tawani. The US had sent a virus to Iranian defense computers, as a result of which were disabled many of the centrifuges used in the enriching of uranium for nuclear weapons for Iran. Tavani introduces this case in order to ask the question whether security breaches can ever be morally justified. Thus, information warfare is by sovereign nations and tends to be more disruptive than destructive. A proper act of war with weapons that destroys living beings would have been destructive, whereas an electronic warfare, information warfare act is disruptive. In this sense, Tavani argues, cyberterrorism is significantly different from information warfare. Cyberterrorism seeks to bring about financial or other kind of damage in order to make their enemies change their course of action, whereas information warfare seeks to stop specific processes. There's an important element in the ethics of cybersecurity breaches that is brought into view by considering information warfare. It is pointed out by reminding us that Barack Obama, during his presidency, was conservative and hesitant to engage in information warfare due to weighing the damage of possible retaliation. A sovereign state has a greater ability to look at the big picture of acts of ethical hacking and to evaluate consequences for the population as a whole, whereas individual hackers do not. Individual hackers think of repercussions of their actions for themselves, but the sovereign states have a more adequate ability to think about the effects of possible retaliation by other sovereign nations on the whole and on the whole population as a whole. This is Stevani's way of saying that information warfare by states is the more ethical way of doing ethical hacking than would be by individuals. The states just have a bigger picture in mind.